You are a creative person, and as a creator, there is no better feeling than seeing your own art transformed from the digital world to the real world. Printing your photos means you can hang them on the wall at home or give them as a gift to others. The only aspect of our photography that will outlive us are the pictures we print today. And that's why I created this challenge, to help you print your best photos. Welcome to the Print Your Picture 3-Day Challenge. Welcome everybody, I'm so excited that you're joining me today. This is day 2 of this 3-day challenge, and the whole point of this challenge is to help you print your photos, to either print and hang them on the wall at home or give them away as gifts. Yesterday was a huge success. We had at least, more than 2,000 people who watched us live or watched the replay just after we were live. We had tons of really good comments. I'm going to show you some of the photos that you have been posting in the Facebook group, photos that you're going to be printing, and that actually really makes me excited. So we are going to get rolling here. I'm just going to share my screen, and there it is. We are on day 2 of the challenge. And a really quick recap. You know, when you watch a TV series like Lost, and you start episode number 2, and then at the beginning it says previously on Lost. And then they give you a recap from what was on the episode before. Well, that's kind of what I'm doing right now, except I'll make it really fast and to the point. So previously on the 3-day challenge, we looked at what the goal of the challenge is. And the goal of the challenge is to get your favorite photo on the wall at home, where you can look at it, where you can be inspired yourself about the art that you create, and you will also inspire everyone else in your family who lives at home when they see your prints. You'll inspire any visitors that you have. And also, the second goal of this challenge is for you to print one of your photos specifically for someone else and give it away as a gift. And remember that we talked about a certain key. There were 2 words that you need to make sure you have fulfilled the mandate of these 2 words before you even think about printing a photo to give it to another person. If you can remember what those 2 words are, I want you to drop it in the chat right now. So there are 3 steps for you to get the most out of this event. And step number 1, you've got to show up every day. This is day 2. There's only 1 more day left. Number 2 is take notes. And number 3 is complete the challenge tasks. Studies show that people who actually complete small tasks, they're called micro commitments, are far more likely to achieve a result and obtain an objective compared to people who don't. And that's why we have challenge tasks. So when I ask you to do something at the end of today, and there will be a task, please do it, because that will be an indication of whether or not you're going to be successful and actually print your photo. Remember, in photography, it's not enough just to like photography, but you have to be an action taker. It's kind of like taking pictures. So many of us have this dream. We want to be able to take really awesome photos, but we don't actually pick up our camera and walk out the front door and get out there and start taking photos. You have to take action. So the action I'm going to ask you to take is right at the end of this session. We're going to keep this session under 1 hour, so this won't take a lot of your time, and you're going to get a lot out of it. So recap what we learned yesterday. We looked at why your family and your friends will love your photography and love seeing it hung on their wall. We looked at how to choose the right images to give as gifts. Remember the 2 words. Hopefully you've put that in the chat. It is emotional connection. And number 3, how to find out, how to determine just how large you can print your photo and still have it look good. So here is what our community is printing. So we see this one from Ken Ryder. And Ken said, I just ordered this one for friends as a Christmas gift. We decided to do it 36 inches wide. And now this is the key part. I just love the fact that Ken wrote this, because it speaks into what I was talking about yesterday. He says, several of us are now wintering in Florida. And frankly, we miss the snow, at least the first snow of the season. Our friends want a piece of home to display in their home. in Florida. So here's a piece of home. And remember, I was talking about emotional connection. So Ken's friends have an emotional connection to this home that's in the picture. It's just such an awesome point here. From Matt Harrison. Now, Matt is recovering from surgery, and I want you all to send your best well wishes and prayers to Matt. He lives in California. He is an actor, and he's definitely going through a difficult time right now. So thoughts and prayers to Matt. Matt said he waited 6 months for the sun to set right down the end of the Hermosa Pier, and he wants to print this picture to commemorate that. Now, that's a big deal to be able to line up the sun with an actual landmark, and there are usually only 2 days of the year where the sun will perfectly line up with your chosen landmark. So he's got that. What a beautiful photo. This means a lot to him, and I really hope he prints it. From Al Unger, he says, this image was taken in Sedona, Arizona. It's a picture of my son in his car. It's a Ford Mustang convertible. And while they took it while they were on a photo trip, we will soon head off to Monument Valley, where he will take a similar image, and both will be printed as a 16 by 20 inch for his office wall. Emotional connection is exactly what we're talking about. Now, Timmy DeHaan, you may recognize him. He is an absolutely outstanding flower photographer. He takes pictures from the garden in his backyard where his wife Susan is this most amazing florist. And he says, here's a picture from a sunset in Kauai. I had this printed 24 inches wide on metal, and I gave it to the couple that we went to Kauai with. I've also sold this picture numerous times, but the most memorable was to a couple whose husband was dying of cancer. He saw my metal picture in an art store, and it moved him. He had it mounted on the wall at the foot of his bed so he could see it every day. Like, oh my goodness, like straight to my heart. So we're talking emotional connection. We're talking emotional connection to the photo, also to the place in Kauai, and a very, very meaningful photo. And Timmy gave this away. And one more from Timmy. Here's a picture of the Rochester Covered Bridge just outside historic Oakland, Oregon, where my wife, Susan, grew up. And her family still lives there. I had it printed 24 inches wide on metal and gave it to Susan's mother at Christmas last year, and she was thrilled. So why was Susan's mother thrilled? It's because this particular covered bridge is from where Susan's mother lives. Presumably, she maybe even grew up there as well. And so Susan's mother has an emotional connection to this place. And so you combine emotional connection to a place with an awesome looking photograph, and you have yourselves a winning image that the recipient is going to love. So these are the two words here. When you're considering printing a picture, either for yourself, for your family member, or for someone else you're going to give it to, you need to meet this mandate of emotional connection. Will the recipient have an emotional connection with the picture? Now, yesterday, I told a really quick story, and I showed some images from my sister Andrea's home office. And I told that story about when she was on her one wheel, kind of an electric skateboard thing, and she fell down and she broke her leg. And she believes in photography so much that she handed her phone to someone and said, take a picture. So she phoned me last night, and I somehow managed to wrestle the picture from Andrea. This is her literally lying on the street with a broken leg. It's like a spiral fracture. And she hands her phone to someone and says, photograph this moment, because she has the motto that if you don't photograph it, then it never happens. So, and she still even got a smile on her face. So awesome for you, Andrea, to have that motto, and also the motto of, if at first you don't succeed, try again. She's still using this one wheel, much to my chagrin, and definitely against all of my advice, but she got back up on that one wheel, and she keeps going and taking pictures literally from the one wheel. So here's what you're going to learn today. Number one, how to edit your photos to make them memorable. Number two, how to export your photos for print, because those are two different things, right? Editing your photos is how you make the photo look dramatic, how you make it beautiful, how you add saturation to a specific color. But exporting your photo is a completely different thing. Two completely different movements here. And number three, you're going to learn today about cropping, editing, and setting up your images to make the best prints possible. So let's talk about step one. All right. So you've got your chosen photo. You know that you want to print this one photo. And now you need to get in front of your computer or maybe your iPad, and you're going to make some edits on it. So what is step one? Well, step one is you're going to do the math to determine just how large you can print this photo. What is the maximum print size that you can print this image? And I showed you yesterday a really, really simple formula that just takes you 2 seconds to do. Let's just quickly recap it. So to determine the maximum print size of your photo, in other words, to determine how large can I print my photo on paper and have it still look good. So all we need to do, we need to know what is the dimension of the longest edge of my photo, and then divide that number by 300 dots per inch, assuming that's the resolution of your printer, and then multiply it by 3. So let's take an example from a Sony mirrorless camera. The native pixel size, the native image size on the longest edge from that particular camera is 6,000 pixels. So we go 6,000 pixels divided by 300 dots per inch, which is the specification you get from your printing company of the resolution they print in, and then multiply by 3. And in this case, you get 60 inches. So we know that with this particular Sony mirrorless camera, we can print a full-size image 60 inches wide, and it's still going to look good. Now, I know that there are many programs out there that will help you to upscale an image even larger than that, but I'm just going with something that is easily learnable, easily explainable, and we don't have to take a deep dive down a rabbit hole to which we would never really come up from. This formula will work for you. So after you know the maximum print size, you need to get to step 2 in this process. And step 2 is to determine the material that you are going to print on. Now, I'm going to go into more detail on day 3 about printing materials. But for now, you're going to need to make a choice between printing on canvas or aluminum or paper. Now, a note about paper. Oftentimes we say the word acrylic. And what the heck is this acrylic business? When people talk about printing on acrylic, what they usually mean is that you will actually be printing your image on paper, but then the printing company will take a sheet of plexiglass and glue it or laminate it on top of that printed paper. And the finished piece, what you see in the image on the right, is usually referred to as acrylic. This is how Peter Lik prints his images, and I'm going to go into more detail about that tomorrow. So in terms of price, canvas is typically the cheapest, aluminum is more expensive, and acrylic is usually the most expensive. Now, the print material is an important decision here at step 2, because your printing medium can determine the print size. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that aluminum and acrylic can often be printed any size because they don't need a frame. They're not limited by having a specific, like a wooden frame around them. But some canvas prints and most paper prints, they need to be printed in standard sizes because they have to fit inside standard frames. So this is why here at step 2, you need to know in advance, are you printing on canvas that has an internal frame and it doesn't really have a set print size, or are you printing and you're trying to fill an existing frame? So let's talk about step 3 now. So now that you know what you're printing on, let's just say that you've decided you're going to print on canvas. Now, step 3 is you need to determine the aspect ratio. Now, notice I'm not saying you need to determine the size, like the number of inches wide your photo is going to be. I'm just talking about the aspect ratio. Aspect ratio is so important. It's not a measurement of actual length, such as 8 inches by 10 inches. Rather, it's a ratio. It has no units. There are no inches and there are no centimeters in an aspect ratio. It's not a size. What it is really, it's just a shape. So in this example, we have a picture with an aspect ratio of 4 by 5. So for every 4 units of height, there will be 5 units of length. So this could be a picture that's 4 inches tall by 5 inches wide, or it could be a picture that's 8 inches tall by 8 inches by 10 inches wide. You've heard of 8 by 10 images all the time. I would say that 8 by 10 images are almost the most popular image size of all time. Like if we just take a look at this canvas here, I showed it to you yesterday. Here's the back of the canvas. Here's the front of the canvas. I didn't print this photo. It's not mine, but this is an 8 by 10. And what makes it cool with a canvas is that because it's a 1.5 inch wide frame, internal wooden frame that you can see from the back, it'll stand up on a desk. And you can get even smaller than this, and it stands up really nicely on a desk. So 8 by 10. And again, here's a paper image that I printed 20 years ago. And it's just a cheap frame. You've seen these frames 1,000 times, but it's 8 by 10. So 8 by 10 inches, and the aspect ratio is 4 by 5. So that's the key takeaway here, is that aspect ratio does not mean dimensions. It just means the shape. So a 4 by 5 aspect ratio could also be 16 by 20 inches, or it could be anything in between that. So there are 3 factors that you need to consider when you are choosing your picture's aspect ratio. And this is really, really important. So stay with me on this. Aspect ratio is sometimes everything. So we're on now step 4, and there are 3 factors to consider. And I'm going to go with 4A. Here's the first of the 3 factors to consider with aspect ratio. So most often for me, it is my photo that will ultimately determine the aspect ratio. You can't just decide on an aspect ratio without first examining the photo to see if that aspect ratio will still allow the photo to look good. Like, you don't want to be cropping out some important part of the composition. So I'm going to show you what I mean, and we're going to crop a landscape photo. So my photo is open in Lightroom Classic, and I've done all of my basic adjustments on it. And if you want to see how I did the adjustments on this photo, I did them in just under 4 minutes during one of my webinars called How to Create Fine Art Photos That Millions Will Love in Just 8 Days. And I did that in 4 minutes. So here is now the time I want to use the crop tool. And I'm finding that the bright sky at the very top of the image is distracting for me because it's the brightest area of the image, and your eye is attracted to the brightest part of the image. So I want to crop that out. So I'm going to click on the crop tool, and I have already decided, after taking a look at what my printing company has available, that I'm going to go with a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. So it's going to be much wider than it is tall. And I'm going to move things down here, but I'm still seeing bright sky here. So I need to move that crop tool. I'm also finding that the left side of the image isn't really doing so much for me. So I'm okay with cropping off a little bit on the left-hand side. And now I am going to call that done. I click on done, and now I don't have that distraction of the sky anymore. But here is the thing that I have to look at. Because I just cropped something off the sides, I now need to take a look at the actual size of the image, the long edge, because previously it was over 8,000 pixels wide, and now it's 7,193 pixels wide. So I need to know that number for the calculation of how wide I can print this image. But the crop is now done. I'm happy with this, and I'm much closer to being able to export my image so that I can send it to the printer. So that is a portrait, or sorry, that is a landscape image. But what if you have a portrait image? What if you have pictures of people? I personally deal a lot with landscapes, but I would guess that more of you have people photos that you want to print compared to landscape. So what factors should you consider when you are cropping a portrait image? So let's just take a look at that. Here is a portrait photo with a classic problem, and that is that what I call kind of the center of gravity of the photo, which is this area that I'm circling here, it's off to one side. And also I find that there's a little too much sky that we just don't need. I want the center of attention to be these faces, and I want to make sure that I don't crop off anything at the bottom, because we have this dog here that needs to be in the photo as well. The dog is definitely one of the main subjects. So let's get out the crop tool, and we need to decide on an aspect ratio here. So for this, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking this kind of looks like an 8:10 aspect ratio. So if I click right here to the word aspect, and beside it, it's as shot. So this is the aspect ratio that comes just straight from the camera. And I go up to 4:5/8:10. 4:5 is the same thing as an 8:10 aspect ratio. So I will click on it, and then I can drag the photo around. And I think I want to reduce a little bit of the sky. We just don't need that much sky. And now I'm putting the center of gravity. So we've got this one face just on the left of the rule of third line. See, this is the rule of, that's the third line, and this is a third line. So I've got one face on the right of the third line. I have the other face on the left of the third line. The dog is included, and we have not too much sky. And now I can click on done, and it's a much more powerful photo. As a matter of fact, I think I will just make a tweak. I'm actually going to move it to the left just a little bit more, like so. And I think that's a little bit better. Of course, if I had time and I was actually going to be printing this, I would want to send this photo into Photoshop and clone out that wire and that telephone pole, because that's definitely a distraction. But other than that, we have ourselves a much more powerful photo. So the first factor in step 4A here, it's create the most powerful composition using the crop tool. And that's where we're going to take a first run at choosing the aspect ratio in order to make that actual composition as powerful as possible. Then we get to step 4B. So 4B is another factor to consider when you are choosing your aspect ratio. And it's really what sizes are available, what print sizes are available from the printing company that you are going to choose. This is a really important thing, because you can't necessarily just choose any old aspect ratio. Oftentimes, print companies have specific aspect ratios that they will print for. So if we go to your favorite printing company, you can see that all the popular sizes they create will be displayed on some kind of a graph or a grid. And you need to crop your photo in accordance with the size and shape of the printed picture that you are going to create. So this means that to decide on your aspect ratio, you need to know what print sizes are available from your printing company. So if we go to a popular aluminum printing company, this is where I buy my own aluminum prints. You can see all the popular sizes that they sell. And these sizes, when you choose the one you want, will determine the aspect ratio of your picture. So in case you're curious about that big aluminum print that I had put on the wall that I showed you on day one, it was 48 inches tall by 96 inches wide, which is 4 feet by 8 feet. So the height is exactly half the width. So this means that it is a 1:2 aspect ratio, and it's the largest picture that this company sells. And as an aside, if you're curious about the price that I paid 1,077 Canadian dollars, which is 850 US dollars. And this is a good price for a high quality aluminum print that is 4 feet by 8 feet in size. Now, a reminder that on day 3, I'm going to give you the name of the printing company that we found as a result of our research at Photography Academy. They do millions of prints a year, and they are the most inexpensive printer in the USA for canvases, and I use them for canvases. So you'll get that name on day 3. So if you wanted to create a print that is larger than 4 by 8 feet, then you would need to create what's called a triptych, which I will show you in a few minutes. Or another option, if you really want to print super large, is that you can get your photo printed in the absolute maximum size possible through having a wall mural mounted. Wall murals are like wallpaper. You get them specially printed, and they come in rolls, and you would glue these rolls to the wall, floor to ceiling, exactly in the same way that you would put up wallpaper. And they are super impressive as long as the photo file that you have submitted to print it is large enough so that the resolution will stay sharp when printed to such a large size. So usually when we're talking wall murals, you want to be submitting a panorama, a high resolution multi-image panorama, so that you'll have a huge photo file that will support that resolution. So this is my Hollywood sign pano, and it's on a wall in a corporate office somewhere, and it just makes me happy to see this picture, to know that there are people in an office somewhere in the USA enjoying this wall mural. So always consider that if you're looking to create a feature wall in your home, you don't have to just paint it a solid color. You can get a wall mural of one of your panoramas created, and they look absolutely spectacular. So the third factor when you're trying to determine what aspect ratio you want to use is whether or not you are wanting to use an existing frame that you may have. Like, many of us have frames from older pictures that are quite expensive, and we want to reuse that frame. So if you have a frame that you're trying to reuse, then your aspect ratio has been decided for you. So if you have a specific frame that you need to print for, or if you have chosen a specific print size from the print company, here is what you need to do to select your aspect ratio. So let me just get Lightroom going one more time here. Inside Lightroom Classic, you need to click on the cropping tool in order to see aspect ratios. And then once you're there, you can click on this little set of arrows right here, and you'll see all of the default aspect ratios that are already there, and they kind of come with Lightroom. So landscape photos in general look better when they are wider rather than taller. Kind of like the 16:9 aspect ratio is one that I gravitate towards a lot. And in this case, the top would be cropped off. But then when we get into portrait photos, generally they look better when they are taller as opposed to wider. And somewhere in the middle of all that is a 1:1 aspect ratio, where the height is the same as the width. And so let's just say that we wanted to just only have kind of these chairs here, and I don't want to include that tree on the left, and click on done. And now we just have the trees. But what if you have a specialized frame, and let's just say you have an old and classic frame, and you want to create an export specifically for that frame? There's an easy way of doing that in Lightroom Classic. So you click on the aspect ratio and click on Enter Custom. And in this case, let's just say that your frame was 36 inches wide and it was 22 inches tall. Well, you put in the height first. So I put in 22 for 22 inches, and this could be 22 inches, 22 centimeters. It doesn't matter, because we're only selecting a ratio here. We're not actually putting in true dimensions. And then it's 36 inches wide. So 22 inches tall by 36 inches wide. Click OK. And now I have the aspect ratio locked in, and then I can move the actual cropping tool around just the way that I want it. And no matter where it ends up, if it's down small down here or really big over here, the aspect ratio will be correct for that custom frame that you have. So this is what you would want to do if you are dealing with a printing company and they only have certain specific image sizes that they will print. So maybe they do a 20:36, and then a 24:36, a 30:36. So all you have to do is click on aspect and then click Enter Custom. And then if it was a 24:36, you just enter those in right there, click OK, and then you can adjust the size of the aspect ratio and move it all around. And by the way, while we're here talking about aspect ratio, I find it is a real benefit to see these grid lines using the rule of third. And the way that you see those is you click O on your keyboard for overlay, and it toggles through a number of different defaults that they have. And finally, the rule of thirds one comes up. And this is a really big help when you're actually choosing an aspect ratio, to be using the rule of thirds. So that's how you enter a custom aspect ratio. I find that most of the aspect ratios that I'm choosing for landscapes, I tend to gravitate towards 16:9. This is the aspect ratio that you will see in a movie or a YouTube video, even a Facebook video. For the most part, they are 16:9 as an aspect ratio, and they look good as landscapes. But you can enter in a custom and really select anything. So no matter what specific size of your print or your frame, you can always enter a custom aspect ratio in Lightroom or the editing program of your choice. And this way, you will take control of the crop and how your finished photo is going to look. You do not want to give the control of the crop over to your printing company. You have no idea the level of experience of the person who is going to be cropping your photo, and they certainly will not care about your photo as much as you care about it. So you want to take that control and get that crop done. So after you've cropped your image in Lightroom, we need to get to step 5 in the process. And this is where you need to quickly recalculate your maximum print size to make sure your image is still large enough to print it in the size that you want. Oftentimes, when I crop my images, I will end up removing unnecessary portions of the photo, which means that my image actually just got smaller. So this means that you need to determine the new width of your image after you just cropped it. I'm a pretty heavy cropper. I mean, it's great if you can do your cropping when you're in the field, either by walking closer to your subject or with the zoom ring on your lens. But often when you get the photo back on the computer screen, you're back at home, I find that there is unnecessary clutter, and I call it noise, in the image, and we want to cut out clutter and noise so that we have the most powerful composition that we can get. So just a quick recap to determine the length of the long edge now, because we've just cropped it and the image is now smaller than it originally was. Then determine the length of the long edge, divide that number by 300 dots per inch if that's the resolution you're printing to, and then multiply by 3, and that will give you the maximum printing size. So if my cropped image is now just 4,000 pixels wide, it used to be 6,000, but now I've cropped it, now it's only 4,000. I just go 4,000 divided by 300 times 3, and I get 40 inches. So now I know I better not be printing this image wider than 40 inches. So this is like a final check and balance to make sure that your printed image is going to look sharp when you print it. And that's really the name of the game. You've got to make sure your final printed image will be sharp. So step 6 is take a day before you send your photo to the printer, because you may have just done all of this work and you just think, wow, this is just great. I love my photo. I'm looking at it on my computer monitor. It looks so awesome. I'm sending this to the printer right now and I'm posting it to social media and I'm going to show it to the world. Let me tell you a super fast story about how that just blew up in my face. In 2009, I was on a family trip to the Grand Canyon. I had all of my gear with me. I was on the edge of the Grand Canyon. I had my photo on its tripod, and I got an awesome photo of the sun setting over the edge of the canyon. And I was super proud of the photo. And I remember I went back to the hotel room that night. I flipped open my laptop. I put in my memory card. I fired up Photoshop. I edited this thing. And at that time in 2009, I was crazy about HDR images. I just thought they were just the cat's meow, the bee's knees. I thought they were so cool. So I edited this Grand Canyon sunset, and I was so happy about it. And then the next morning I woke up and I was like excited to look again at my new HDR sunset photo. So let me show you what I had actually printed, or I hadn't printed it, but what I had created. There it is. That's the actual photo. Ta-da! And I couldn't believe my eyes the next morning. I was like, what was I thinking last night? This looks like a post-nuclear apocalypse. So how is it that I could think that my photo looked good the previous night, but 8 hours later, I was totally embarrassed by my own photo? So you need to make sure that you have walked away from your photo for at least one night so that you can look at it with fresh eyes before you post it to social media and before you send it to the printing company. So there are kind of 3 things that you need to do here to make sure that you pass this test. This is your final check and balance to make sure you're on the right track. So some screens will automatically turn yellow at night, and this is going to change all the color tones in your images. So warm tinged lights, like if you have warm lights in your room, it can also change the way you see your photo. Editing your photos in a dark room, it can be hard on your eyes, but it can change the way you perceive the color tones, and then you'll end up making bad edits. So if you do edit at night, you have to recheck the image during the daylight to make sure that it looks good both in daylight and at night. Second, send your edited photo to multiple devices like your phone, your laptop, and your tablet, and see how it looks on different screens. A lot of people ask, oh, do you get your monitor calibrated before you send to the printer? No, I don't. This is what I do. I send to multiple screens and I take a look at it on a spectrum of different looks and different types of screens. And I make sure that on average, it's going to look good across all screens. And this printing of your picture, it's an important investment that you're making. So you want your printed image really to look great. And the third thing that you need to do, and I'd say this is almost the most important one, ask a trusted person, ask your spouse, what do you think of this photo? Because they will see things with fresh eyes. They'll see things differently than you do. If you can, show them the original photo as well. And that way they can marvel at the transition, or they can tell you that you are way off track and you've gone off on a tangent and you've started a cult with this new photo and you need to come back to the fold and reestablish your roots. So this is your final check and balance to make sure that you're on track, and you need second opinions. So we're down to the second to last step in printing your photo, and step 7 is the export settings. This is a big one, but it's a quick one. So you're almost finished. You're almost ready to export your print file out of your computer. You've done the editing on it. You've done the crop, but you have that last step and you need to export the image and send it to the print company. So let me show you what you need to do in Lightroom. So there are two things that we need to do before we actually export our photo to send to the printer. And the first one is regarding a weird anomaly that just seems to happen whenever you print a photo. And the anomaly is that when you get your photo back from the printer, you find that it's just a little darker than you hoped that it would be. And the reason for that is that you are editing your photo on an LCD computer monitor, which has a light behind it. And when you see the photo on your monitor, it will always appear to be brighter than it will when your photo comes back from the printer and is being printed on canvas or paper. So I will compensate for that in advance, knowing my print needs to be a little bit brighter than it should be when it's on my monitor. So at this point, you'll notice that my exposure setting is at +0.2, and that looks great on my monitor, but I'm going to make it even brighter before I send this photo to the printer. So I'm going to go up to a +0.5, and it looks just a little bright right now, but that's okay because I'm compensating for this problem of darkness. Now, the next thing that I need to do is to over sharpen the image just a little bit in anticipation of printing it. When you are processing a photo that's just going to be online and viewed on computer monitors or phones, you really don't need to sharpen your images. But when you're going to be printing on paper, you do need to. So we go down to the sharpening panel, and I'm going to crank up the sharpening to close to 100. I'm going to zoom in and just take a look at some of the grass here and just make sure that I don't have any weird artifacts or weird color noise. And now I'm going to go zoom back out. And I don't want to be sharpening the clouds in the sky. So what I will do is I put my mouse over the masking slider and I hold down Alt on my keyboard and just start to slide to the right. And anything that is completely black will not be sharpened. And I usually find as a general rule that a setting of about 50 is usually going to be about the right setting so that the sky is totally black, which means it will not be sharpened. I mean, generally, really, I just want to be sharpening edges of hard objects. So I'm going to let go there. So now I know my clouds won't be getting sharpened, and I do have a lot of sharpening on, but that's okay because we're about to send this to the printer. So I have got my aspect ratio already set, and I have got the sharpening done. I've brightened it just a little bit extra, and now I'm ready to actually export the digital file. So I go to File and Export. And there are only a couple of things that really need to be taken care of here. So the first one is with custom text. I always have file naming and rename to custom name. I always choose that. So I want to put in my own custom name. I'll say Key West Beach. And this was photo number 862. That was the number that came out of my camera. I always include that photo number so that I can always refer back to the original file. And I'll also put a size on it. And this one is 36 inches wide because I know that I'm going to be exporting this one to the printer and I want to print this 36 inches wide. So next I go down to File Settings. And most printing companies, especially the ones that are online, the bulk printing companies, they want you to submit your image as a JPEG image. And I want to make sure that the quality is right up to 100% quality. And I want the color space not to be sRGB. sRGB is a color space that we want to use for our photos that are going to be online. But for printing, we generally want Adobe RGB as the color space. So I'm clicking Adobe RGB. Now, if I am going to be dealing with a custom printer and they're very reputable and they've got someone who will actually be looking at your image individually and they tell you, hey, we are going to be upsizing the image for you, then I will click Don't Enlarge so that Lightroom will not enlarge the image. But in this case, I'm going to be sending my image to a bulk printing company and there will not be a real professional individually examining my photo and making sure that everything's okay. So I want Lightroom to do the enlarging for me. And I want Lightroom to make it, I guess I could kind of say supersize it in a way. So I want to click on Resize to Fit on the long edge. And I don't want pixels selected. I want inches selected. And I'm going to click on that box and 36 inches. So what's happening now, as long as I have this 300 dots per inch selected, Lightroom is going to upsize and upscale my image so that the final outputted JPEG file will truly be 36 inches along the longest edge at 300 dots per inch. And now I have got my export settings done and I'm ready to click on the export button. And I have the full confidence in knowing that I have the correct aspect ratio and my JPEG will be the exact correct size so that I can print it 36 inches wide at the printing company at a resolution of 300 dots per inch. So we have step 7 done, and now there's only just one final step, and that is to actually upload your photo file to the printing company of your choice. And on day 3, I'm going to show you the results of our research. I'm going to tell you the name of the least expensive printing company that we use and that we could find in the USA. They're a bulk printer and they do millions of prints per year. So I have just now showed you the 8 steps to printing your photo. As a quick recap, step 1, determine the maximum print size of the file that you have, of your image file. Step 2, determine the print material like canvas, aluminum, or paper. Step 3, determine the aspect ratio that you're going to be cropping to. And then step 4, actually do the crop. Step 5, recalculate the print size to make sure that you can still print as large as you want it to and that your photo has survived the crop. Step 6, take a day off and reset your eyes and just kind of cleanse the palette of your eyes. Step 7 is to actually export that file out of your computer, and step 8 is upload it to your computer. So I want to talk briefly about a triptych. This is a trendy way of printing photos to create a series of photos. And it's called a triptych. There's a Y in the word tick. And it's a series of 3 photos along the same theme that are typically mounted in a row. So there are 2 different types of triptychs. The first type is a multi-image triptych, where you will have 3 different images that are part of the same theme. So think of having multi-images from the ocean, or maybe the same person doing a similar action in all 3 photos, like diving into the water or scoring a touchdown. And the second type of triptych is a single image triptych. In other words, there are 3 separate photos that have been made from one single image. And that single image has been broken up into 3 pieces that are the same size and spaced separately on a wall. So how do you make a triptych? Why would you want to make a triptych? And the reason being is that, let's just say you want to print large, and maybe you want a photo that's 8 feet wide in total. Well, maybe the printing company that you're going to use, or maybe if you're printing at home, you can't print 8 feet wide. So this is a great reason to have a triptych. Also, the images are much easier to ship and to move, and it fills more space on a wall. It's cheaper to print 3 smaller images than 1 really large image, and it's kind of trendy. They just look good these days. So let me show you how to quickly create a triptych from 1 image. All right, so I've got the photo open in Photoshop, and it's easier to make a triptych in Photoshop compared to Lightroom. Doing this is really easy. All you need to do to start is click on View at the very top and go down to New Guide Layout. So I've clicked on that, and you'll notice that there are 4 columns right now, and I want that to be 3. So see where it says 4 right here? I just need to change that 4 to a 3. And in addition, see how there's a space between these 2 lines? That's called the gutter, and I don't want any gutter at all. So I change that number that is right now 25, change that to 0, and click on OK. And now I have 3 evenly divided grid lines on this photo. So the next thing I need to do is go back to my View menu and turn on Snap. And this will make it easier for me to select just one of these panels, if I can call them that. So I want to click on the square selection tool, and then click, drag, and hold, and go down, and see how the line just beautifully snaps over top of that grid line. So now let go, and we're almost done here with the first section of the triptych. Just one more thing to do. Click on File and then New, and you'll notice that the dimensions of what I just selected are already there in the clipboard. It makes it really easy. Now click on Create, and now I have a blank document, and it's just waiting for me to paste in my copied first part of the triptych. But you know what? I forgot one little thing back here. I forgot to copy. So since I have this already selected, I need to go Edit and Copy, or you could use a keyboard shortcut for that. And now I go Edit and Paste. And here's my first image pasted in. Now I need to select the middle section. I didn't quite select that close enough to the grid line, and there it is. So I go Edit and Copy, File and New, and then create the middle blank image, and I'm going Control V to paste, and that would just be Command V on a Mac. And now let's just select the last one. So I want to click, drag, and hold, and Control C on my Windows computer to copy it, and click on File, New, Create, and here's my blank document, and Control V to paste. And let's take a look at all 3 of them now. So here's the first one on the left, here's the middle one, and here is the one over on the right. So here are some things that you should consider when you are considering creating a triptych. I really do like triptychs. I mean, I would rather, if I have the space, I would rather see it in one big image, but there's something about triptychs that look really cool. So some factors to consider when you are considering creating a triptych from a single image is Is the composition centered? Because the principle of balance and symmetry here in this composition is crucial to making your triptych work. The spaces where the triptych is broken into multiple pieces should not cut through any main elements like a person's face or through the middle of a building. And look for images where the main element is in the center of the image frame. Like this one here, we have a dock that's going out. It's just perfect for a triptych. Also look for images that have dark spaces on the sides of the image that will lead the viewer's attention to the center frame. Wide panoramas make great triptychs because the spaces in the center are intriguing and it helps the viewer focus on each individual section. So one other thing to consider when you are printing your photos, and that is the issue of black and white. Never forget about black and white. Black and whites are awesome. We get so caught up in color images and we forget about black and white. But black and whites have a timeless and a classic feel. They never, ever, ever go out of style. They never get old. And another really cool thing about black and whites is that if you're going to be hanging your picture in a room that has a specific color theme, maybe you have throw cushions that are green and you have another different paint color on the wall, a black and white will always fit inside any color scheme of any room, whereas a color photo will not always fit. So they work very, very well for portrait photos, photos of people's faces. It makes the photo look even more emotional than if the photo was color. And they're also more forgiving. If the colors in your landscape photo are not spectacular, then try converting that photo to black and white. And it allows the viewer to concentrate more on the composition as opposed to the colors. But don't go for a black and white option if your photo is a simple 2-color palette. So if you have a color photo and it only is a 2-color image, those will look good as color. Another thing that doesn't work with black and whites, it's usually sunsets. Sunsets and sunrises typically don't look great for black and whites. So this brings me to our challenge today because we are creeping up on an hour. So your challenge today is to edit the photo that you want to print and to go into the Photography Academy Facebook group and post it as a comment on this video. Don't create a brand new post. Just find the post that has this video on it and post a comment with your photo and write something. Tell us what size you want to print your picture and where you are going to put your picture. So the big question is, are there going to be recordings from this 3-day challenge? Yes, there are recordings. These recordings will stay online for 3 days and then they're going to be taken offline. But if you are a member of Photography Academy Prime, you will have unlimited access to the recordings in the members area. So here's what you're going to learn on day 3. You will learn how to choose the right printing materials. You will learn how to select the right framing options, and you will learn the name of the least expensive and highest volume print company in the USA that we've been able to find as a result of our research. And you are going to learn exactly how to upload your photos so that by the end of day 3, you literally have uploaded your own photo. And we have a day 4. What you're going to get on day 4, if you are a member of Photography Academy Prime, you will get access to day 4. It's going to be a live coaching session. I know a lot of you have questions about printing, technical questions, and I'm going to be there to answer any and all of your questions. That will be on Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And finally, what the heck is this Photography Academy Prime? Well, it's a brand new program. It's only just over a week old that we launched it, and we launched it to solve a problem. And the problem was that people didn't know where's the one place I can go to get all of my questions answered. So I created a series of dozens and dozens and dozens of videos that just specifically answer one problem. And we took all of those videos and we put them inside a place called Photography Academy Prime. And Prime, it's kind of like Netflix. You get your own login and you have access to, right now we have 130 videos inside in various categories like adventure photography videos or videos that teach you how to do post-processing or the quick answers over on the right-hand side there. So this is kind of like Netflix where you can you have on-demand video streaming so that you can get all of your questions answered. But it's not just videos. You also get access to the entire Photography Academy book library. And we have released a brand new book that we have not made public, and it's called What Camera Should I Buy? That's also included in Photography Academy Prime. In addition, we have tools for you. So some of the tools that I'll show you right now are called Photoshop brushes. So let's just say you have a photo and like in the top right corner, and you have a very boring and bland blue sky, and you want to insert some clouds. Well, these brushes allow you to insert clouds, or maybe you want to insert a moon like in the bottom left corner, or maybe you want to insert falling snow. You can just brush in those effects. In addition, we have a sky pack. So if you have an image like on the left where the sky is very boring, you can drop in a new sky, and we give you these skies as part of your Photography Academy Prime membership. So the cost of Photography Academy Prime, it is a monthly membership. You can pay monthly at $19.99. Or you can make one annual payment, which works out to $16.42 per month. So this is our newest program. I'm really excited about it. We're going to be putting new content into the Photography Academy Prime library on an ongoing basis. This is kind of the focus of Photography Academy at this point. And I'll also be having live training sessions for members of Photography Academy Prime. It's pretty exciting for us. I hope that you'll take a look at it. There should be a link to Photography Academy Prime in the comments of this video, or even up in the description of this video. So on that note, I will end off today. I promised you we'd be done in an hour, and we've been done in 56 minutes. I'm happy about that. So I really look forward to seeing your photos that you're going to post inside the Facebook group. Make sure that you do that challenge task. Remember what I said in the beginning, that when you make those micro commitments, you are far more likely to actually achieve the result that you're trying to achieve, which in this case is print that photo. And I know what it feels to procrastinate the printing of a photo year after year after year, and it just never gets done. So this is your kick in the pants to push you and get it done. And by the end of tomorrow, you should be printing your photo, and it's a great time to be doing that because it's a great time to be giving away one of your photos as a gift to someone who has an emotional connection to the content of your photo. So thank you everybody for joining me live today. Please do post your image that you're going to be printing inside the Facebook group, and I look forward to seeing you on day 3. So bye-bye everybody, and see you tomorrow.